Hello and welcome to IBTimes TV. I'm Leanna Brinded, Business Editor for the International Business Times. Joining me now is Nadya Powell. She's the MD for EMEA at MRY. So hi, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Well, we're at an exciting event here. We're talking about online and mobile gaming. So maybe you can tell me a bit about how the sector has boomed over the last few years.
It has certainly boomed and then it's grown, but when it comes to advertising spend, it's still a tiny proportion of what people are spending. So last year, the UK spent £5.4 billion on advertising, and of that, online gaming, in-game advertising was only 0.5% of that spend. So it's grown massively, but it's still a tiny proportion of what people are actually spending.
In terms of how companies allocate their budgets for when they want to advertise, previously it was print and then print and online. How would you say the percentages for companies allocating now?
Well, I think the challenge for them is that online gaming advertising is still seen as really high risk and innovative. So when it comes to them allocating budget, it probably won't be part of their core kind of spend. They will probably see it as innovation spend or test spend. And I think that's why it's such a small percentage at the moment.
Okay, and what do you think? Do you think there's some common misconceptions when it comes to in-game advertising for clients?
I think there are huge misconceptions still about gaming, that it's the sweaty teenagers, when in reality, the biggest audience that brands want to reach are women in the home. They make most of the purchasing decisions now, and they're also the biggest gamers. So we're in this really strange situation where there's this huge opportunity to reach these women, but it's still a tiny proportion of effort that brands are putting in.
What would you say are the core elements to those games that get lots of women getting into games? I hear that the demographic for, the Candy Crush era has really boomed. So, I mean, what would you say are, in a nutshell, the elements that make games so engaging?
Mobile has encouraged, I think, that demographic to come in a lot more because it's dip in and dip out games. So whereas console games were like really high engagement, you had to give in 1, 2, 3 hours to play it, mobile and social games are much more about a light dip in, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, drop the kids off at school, come home, watch a bit of Trisha and then play some online gaming, essentially. So I think that has really encouraged the uptake of these women.
And do you are there any certain companies that maybe are a bit more ahead of the curve in terms of really tapping into those opportunities of advertising in-game compared to others?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really interesting is that a lot of gaming companies didn't realise that mobile was coming. Facebook didn't realise that mobile was coming, so you can kind of forgive them. EA, I think, are a great brand that have got some really good titles, have moved into mobile really aggressively and have quite mature advertising solutions as well. Now, you'd expect Electronic Arts to do something really good because it's kind of what they should be doing, but I think they really are quite premium. And then you've got other brands like I Am Player and Stardoll, who are also doing really interesting things in that space, really immersive, really deep, and the brand is part of the story rather than an add-on.
Okay, and I mean, rounding into, I suppose, full circle, you're saying that advertising spend for it is actually still quite small. Do you see then realistically a lot more money being put down by companies for advertising over the next few years, or is this going to be a really long-term type of investment?
I mean, social and video have gone from nothing to huge in 4 or 5 years. Gaming, the opportunity in games, have actually been around for much longer, but I think brands still haven't quite got their heads around it, and that's why it's been slow. But it is growing at over 100% every year, so I do think it will start to catch up a little bit with social over the next 2 or 3 years.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
And that was Nadya Powell. She's the MD at EMEA for MRY.